The clatter of plates and the sizzle of bacon were Sarah's morning symphony. At 24, she knew every inch of Rosie's diner, from the chipped Formica countertops to the squeaky hinges on the back door. Rosie's wasn't glamorous, but it was home. It was also her lifeline. Sarah's days were a relentless cycle of taking orders, refilling coffee, and wiping tables. The tips were barely enough to cover rent and groceries, let alone her dreams of one day opening her own bakery. She was good at baking, her apple pie was legendary among the regulars. But dreams cost money, and money was something she rarely saw. Despite the constant struggle, Sarah possessed an unwavering optimism. She greeted each customer with a genuine smile, even the grumpy ones. Most days, her sunny disposition was enough to brighten their moods. However, beneath the cheerful exterior lay a quick temper, a fiery spirit that occasionally flared up when pushed too far. It was a trait she'd inherited from her grandmother, a woman who never backed down from a fight. Sarah tried to keep it in check, knowing that losing her cool could cost her the job she desperately needed. But sometimes, the injustice of it all, the long hours, the low pay, the demeaning comments, became too much to bear. On those days, she felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap. Rosie's Diner was more than just a place to eat. It was a community hub, a time capsule of simpler days. The red vinyl booths, worn smooth by countless patrons, lined the walls. Sunlight streamed through the large front window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The aroma of frying bacon and strong coffee hung heavy, a comforting scent that permeated everything. The walls were adorned with faded photographs of local sports teams and community events, a testament to Rosie's long-standing presence in the town. A vintage jukebox stood in the corner, its chrome gleaming despite its age, occasionally belting out classic tunes that made the regulars tap their feet. Most mornings, Rosie's was filled with the familiar faces of construction workers grabbing a quick breakfast, retirees lingering over coffee and newspapers, and families fueling up before school. They were a loyal bunch, forgiving of the diner's imperfections, the occasional wobbly table, the slightly burnt toast, the sometimes gruff service from Old Man Earl, the cook. But Rosie's also had its share of difficult customers. Tourists passing through, impatient travelers, and the occasional local looking for a free meal or a fight. Sarah had learned to handle most of them with a smile and a dose of patience, but some days even her best efforts weren't enough. It was a delicate balancing act, keeping the peace while trying to earn a living. The bell above the door jingled, announcing a new arrival. A man entered, dressed in faded jeans, a worn-out t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He looked like any other tourist passing through, but there was something about his demeanor that set Sarah on edge. He scanned the diner with a critical gaze, his lips pursed in a perpetual frown. He chose a booth in the back, away from the morning crowd, and slumped into it with a sigh. Sarah approached him with her usual smile, but it faltered slightly under his intense stare. "Morning, sir. What can I get for you?" "Coffee," he grunted, without making eye contact. "Black. And make it strong." Sarah poured him a cup, noticing the expensive watch peeking out from under his sleeve. It seemed out of place with his casual attire. As she walked away, she caught him observing her and the other staff, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be studying them, analyzing their every move. Little did Sarah know this seemingly ordinary man was Richard, a millionaire in disguise, searching for something real in a world of artifice. He was tired of the superficiality of his life and was looking for genuine human connection, even if it meant acting the part of a grumpy, demanding customer. Richard beckoned Sarah over with a snap of his fingers. "I've decided," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I'll have the eggs Benedict." But he held up a finger. The hollandaise sauce must be made with free-range eggs and absolutely no artificial flavorings. And the English muffin must be toasted to precisely a golden brown, not too light, not too dark. "Understood." Sarah bit back a sigh. Eggs Benedict wasn't even on the menu. "I'll see what I can do, sir." She relayed the complicated order to Earl, who shot her a withering look. Earl grumbled something about fancy city folk, but begrudgingly started preparing the dish. When the eggs Benedict finally arrived, Sarah presented it to Richard with a forced smile. He examined it meticulously, poking at the eggs with his fork. "This hollandaise is too thick," he declared. "And the muffin is practically burnt. Are you even trying?" Sarah's patience began to fray. "I'm sorry, sir, but Earl did his best. It's not exactly a five-star restaurant here." "That's obvious," Richard sneered. "I wouldn't expect quality service in a place like this. You people clearly don't know anything about proper cuisine." His words stung, laced with condescension and a blatant disregard for Sarah's hard work. "You know," Richard continued, his voice rising, drawing the attention of other diners, "it's people like you who ruin this country. No work ethic, no pride in your job, just a bunch of lazy. That was it? Something inside Sarah snapped. The years of holding back, of swallowing her pride, of enduring the constant disrespect all came crashing down in a single, explosive moment. Before she could think, before she could reason, her hand shot out. The sound echoed through the diner, a sharp, resounding slap that silenced the room. Richard's head snapped to the side, his eyes wide with shock. Sarah stood there, trembling, her hand stinging, her heart pounding in her chest. The other diners gasped, their forks clattering against their plates. Earl emerged from the kitchen, a spatula in his hand, his expression a mixture of surprise and concern. Sarah stared at Richard, her chest heaving. "That's enough," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I've had enough of your insults and your arrogance. We work hard here, and we deserve respect. You can take your money and your fancy demands and get out." The silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. Sarah knew she'd crossed a line. She'd probably just lost her job. But in that moment, she didn't care. A strange sense of liberation washed over her. She'd finally stood up for herself. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Sarah's moment of defiance quickly evaporated, replaced by a wave of mortification. What had she done? She had slapped a customer. Her job, her already precarious financial situation flashed before her eyes. She braced herself for Earl's inevitable shouting and the pink slip that would follow. Richard remained motionless, his hand gingerly touching his cheek. His expression was unreadable, a strange mix of surprise and something else, amusement? Sarah couldn't tell. The other diners stared, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. A few averted their gaze, pretending they hadn't seen anything. Earl shuffled forward, his spatula still clutched in his hand. "Sarah," he began, his voice low and cautious. "What in tarnation?" Before Earl could finish, Sarah interrupted. "I'm sorry, Earl. I lost my temper. I know I shouldn't have. I'll pack my things." She turned to leave, shame burning in her cheeks. Every eye in the diner was on her, judging her. She felt like crawling under a rock and disappearing. The brief moment of liberation was gone, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. She was about to be unemployed, with no savings and no prospects. All because she couldn't control her temper. Just as Sarah reached the edge of the diner, Richard spoke. "Wait." Sarah stopped, her back still to him. She didn't want to face him, to see the anger or the contempt in his eyes. "I'm not going to press charges," Richard said, his voice surprisingly calm. "And I'm not going to demand that you be fired." Sarah turned around slowly, her eyes narrowed. "Why not?" Richard actually smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. "Because," he said, "you're the first person in a long time who's been honest with me. You didn't try to flatter me or appease me. You reacted authentically." He stood up and walked towards her, his gaze intense. "I'm used to people fawning over me, telling me what they think I want to hear. Your fiery spirit is a refreshing change. It's real." Sarah stared at him, completely bewildered. This wasn't the reaction she expected. "Real?" she repeated incredulously. "I slapped you. That's not exactly a good thing." "Maybe not," Richard conceded. "But it's honest. And honesty is something I value above all else. It's a rare commodity in my world." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I was being deliberately obnoxious. I wanted to see how people would react. You passed the test." "You're testing people?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "That's insane." Richard chuckled. "Maybe. But it's necessary. You see, I'm not exactly who you think I am." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, expensive-looking phone. He tapped a few buttons and showed Sarah a news article. The headline read, "Richard Harding announces new philanthropic initiative." The accompanying picture showed a sharply dressed man, the same man who stood before her in faded jeans and a baseball cap, but undeniably wealthier and more polished. "Richard Harding?" Sarah gasped, recognizing the name. He was a local millionaire known for his business acumen and his philanthropic endeavors. You're him." "Guilty," Richard said with a wry smile. "I'm Richard Harding. And I've been spending the last few weeks traveling around, observing people, trying to find someone genuine. Someone who isn't impressed by my money or my status." He explained that he was tired of the sycophants and gold diggers who populated his social circle. He wanted to find someone with a good heart, someone who valued honesty and integrity. He was looking for someone real. "I know it's unconventional," he admitted, "but I believe in testing character. And you, Sarah, have proven that you have it in spades." "Look," Richard continued, pulling out a checkbook, "I know this whole situation is bizarre. And I apologize for putting you through it. As compensation for my unconventional methods, I'd like to offer you this." He quickly wrote out a check and handed it to Sarah. She glanced at the amount and her eyes widened. It was enough to pay off her debts, cover her rent for months, and even put a down payment on a small bakery. I can't accept this, she stammered, handing the check back to him. It's too much. Consider it a reward for your honesty, Richard insisted, gently pushing the check back into her hand. And as further compensation for my boorish behavior, I'd like to invite you to dinner. Sarah looked at him skeptically. Dinner? Are you serious? Completely serious, Richard said with a smile. I'd like to get to know you better outside of this unusual context. I want to understand what makes you tick, what your dreams are. And maybe, just maybe, he added with a wink, I can help you achieve them. He paused, letting his words sink in. So, what do you say, Sarah? Will you have dinner with me? Sarah hesitated, clutching the check in her hand. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. One minute she was a struggling waitress, and the next she was being offered a life-changing sum of money and a dinner invitation by a millionaire she had just slapped. I don't know, Mr. Harding, she said, her voice cautious. This is all happening too fast. And frankly, it's a little weird. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was a catch, that this was some kind of elaborate game she didn't understand. Why would a man like Richard Harding be interested in someone like her? What were his true motives? Was he just bored? Was she just another one of his experiments? I understand your hesitation, Richard said, his voice gentle. I know I haven't exactly made the best first impression. And I know it's a lot to take in. But I assure you, my intentions are genuine. I'm simply looking for something real, and I believe you might be it. He saw the doubt in her eyes and added, you don't have to decide right now. Take the check. Think about my offer. Talk to your friends. And if you decide it's not for you, that's perfectly fine. No pressure. Sarah looked at the check again, then back at Richard. She still wasn't sure if she could trust him, but the possibility of a better future, a future where she could finally pursue her dreams, was too tempting to ignore. After a sleepless night filled with swirling thoughts and endless what-ifs, Sarah finally decided to cash the check. It felt wrong somehow, profiting from such a bizarre situation, but the money was too tempting to resist. She confided in her two best friends, Maria and Emily, who were predictably ecstatic and urged her to go on the date. Girl, are you crazy? Maria exclaimed. This is like a real-life Cinderella story. You have to go. Emily, ever the pragmatist, added, even if it doesn't work out romantically, think of the networking opportunities. And the free food. Sarah still had reservations, but the money had already started to ease her worries. She could finally breathe, knowing she wasn't one paycheck away from disaster. And maybe, just maybe, Richard was sincere. So, with a mix of trepidation and excitement, Sarah called Richard and reluctantly agreed to a date. But, she added firmly, I'm paying for my own meal. Richard chuckled. Deal. Pick you up at 7? As she hung up the phone, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. What would a date with a millionaire be like? Would she even fit in his world? Only time would tell. She knew that this was a turning point in her life, a leap of faith into the unknown. And whether it led to love or heartbreak, she was determined to face it head-on. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of dates, each more extravagant than the last. Richard was determined to win Sarah over, pulling out all the stops. He took her to fancy restaurants with menus she couldn't decipher, to art galleries filled with paintings she didn't understand, and to the opera where she promptly fell asleep. He even chartered a private plane to take her to a secluded beach for a romantic picnic. But amidst the lavish displays of wealth, Richard also made an effort to understand Sarah's world. He visited Rosie's diner, chatting with Earl and the regulars, trying to appreciate the simple joys of small-town life. He listened intently as Sarah talked about her dreams of opening a bakery, her passion for baking, and her love for her community. He learned about her struggles, her hopes, and her fears. He saw her kindness, her generosity, and her unwavering spirit. He admired her strength and her independence. He realized that she was more than just a fiery waitress. She was a woman of substance, a woman of integrity, a woman who was truly special. However, Sarah still struggled to reconcile the Richard she knew from Rosie's diner with the Richard Harding, millionaire philanthropist. Was he being genuine, or was she just a project, another way for him to alleviate his boredom? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in a fairy tale, and fairy tales rarely had happy endings. The cultural clash between Sarah and Richard was a constant source of amusement and awkwardness. At a fancy cocktail party Sarah used to casual gatherings accidentally spilled a glass of red wine on a guest's designer dress. Richard, ever the smooth operator, quickly smoothed things over, but Sarah couldn't help but feel out of place among the impeccably dressed socialites. Richard, in turn, struggled to navigate the down-to-earth atmosphere of Rosie's diner. He ordered an espresso only to be met with blank stares from Earl, who only served regular coffee. He tried to engage the regulars in a conversation about art, but they were more interested in discussing the local sports team. One evening, Richard took Sarah to a charity gala where she was expected to make small talk with wealthy donors. Sarah, uncomfortable with the superficiality of the event, blurted out a joke about the absurdity of spending thousands of dollars on a single dinner while so many people were struggling to make ends meet. The room fell silent, and Richard had to diplomatically steer her away from the conversation. Despite the awkward moments, Sarah and Richard found humor in their cultural differences. They learned to appreciate each other's perspectives and to find common ground, even when they came from vastly different worlds. These differences, while challenging, also made their connection unique and intriguing. As time went on, Sarah started to let her guard down. She realized that Richard, despite his wealth and privilege, was genuinely interested in her, not just as a novelty but as a person. She began to share her dreams with him, her longing to open a small bakery filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and the warmth of community. She described the kind of place she envisioned, a cozy haven where people could gather, connect, and savor simple pleasures. She also revealed her insecurities, her fear that she wasn't good enough, that she would never be able to achieve her dreams, that she would always be stuck in a dead-end job. She confessed her anxieties about their relationship, her worry that their differences were too vast to overcome, that she would never truly fit into his world. Richard listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. He told her that he believed in her, that she had the talent and the drive to make her dreams a reality. He reassured her that their differences were what made their connection so special, that he valued her honesty and her authenticity. He shared his own vulnerabilities, his loneliness despite his wealth, his desire for genuine connection, his longing for a love that was based on something more than superficiality. As they opened up to each other, their bond deepened, and Sarah began to believe that maybe, just maybe, their fairy tale could have a happy ending after all. Being around Sarah started to change Richard. He became less demanding, less focused on the superficial trappings of wealth, and more appreciative of the simple things in life. He started to see the value in genuine connection, in honest conversation, and in the warmth of community. He stopped obsessing over the perfect vintage of wine and started enjoying the simple pleasure of a cup of coffee at Rosie's diner. He traded his expensive suits for comfortable jeans and t-shirts. He spent less time attending galas and more time volunteering at the local soup kitchen with Sarah. He even started baking. Sarah, amused by his initial attempts, patiently taught him the basics, guiding his clumsy hands as he kneaded dough and decorated cupcakes. He discovered a newfound appreciation for the hard work and dedication that went into creating something delicious from scratch. He realized that true happiness wasn't found in wealth or status, but in meaningful relationships and in making a positive impact on the world. He saw the joy that Sarah derived from helping others, and he wanted to be a part of that. He was transforming from a demanding millionaire into a more grounded, compassionate, and authentic human being, all thanks to the influence of a fiery waitress who had slapped him across the face. Their newfound happiness was soon threatened by the arrival of Victoria, Richard's ex-girlfriend. Victoria was everything Sarah wasn't: sophisticated, wealthy, and impeccably dressed. She made it clear that she disapproved of Richard's relationship with a common waitress and saw Sarah as a gold digger trying to take advantage of Richard's wealth. Victoria made several attempts to sabotage their relationship. She spread rumors about Sarah, highlighting her quick temper and her humble background. She tried to undermine Sarah's confidence, making snide remarks about her clothes and her lack of social graces. But her most damaging act was exposing Richard's past flaws. She revealed stories of his past extravagance, his demanding behavior, and his superficial relationships. She painted a picture of a man who was incapable of genuine connection, a man who was only interested in appearances. Victoria hoped to shatter Sarah's illusion of Richard's transformation and to drive a wedge between them. Her interference forced Sarah to confront her doubts and to question whether Richard had truly changed or if he was simply putting on an act to impress her. It was a painful reminder of the vast differences in their worlds and the challenges they faced in building a lasting relationship. Victoria's revelations cast a long shadow over Sarah and Richard's relationship. Sarah found herself constantly second-guessing Richard's actions, wondering if he was truly committed to change or if he was simply reverting to his old ways. The stories of his past extravagance and his demanding behavior haunted her, making her question if she could ever truly trust him. She started to withdraw, becoming more distant and guarded. She spent less time with Richard, preferring the familiar comfort of Rosie's diner and the company of her friends. She wondered if she had been foolish to believe that their relationship could work, that a waitress from a small town could find happiness with a millionaire from a different world. The cultural differences that had once seemed charming now felt like insurmountable obstacles. She worried that she would never truly fit into Richard's world, that she would always be an outsider looking in. She questioned if their love was strong enough to overcome these challenges, if their fairy tale was destined to crumble. She confronted Richard with her doubts, expressing her fears that he was still the same man he had been before they met. Richard listened patiently, acknowledging his past mistakes and reaffirming his commitment to change. He vowed to prove to her that he was a different man, a man who valued her love above all else. Richard knew he had to do something drastic to prove his love and commitment to Sarah, to show her that he was truly willing to give up his old ways. He decided to make a grand gesture, something that would demonstrate the depth of his feelings and his willingness to embrace her world. He surprised Sarah by buying the old building next to Rosie's diner, the one she had always dreamed of turning into her bakery. He renovated it completely, transforming it into the cozy haven she had always envisioned, complete with a state-of-the-art kitchen, a charming seating area, and a warm, inviting atmosphere. He didn't just hand her the keys, he worked alongside her, learning the ins and outs of running a small business, helping her choose the menu and even designing the logo. He involved the community, inviting local artists to display their work and hosting a bake sale to raise money for charity. On the grand opening day, Richard stood beside Sarah, beaming with pride as she welcomed customers into her dream bakery. He had given her more than just a building, he had given her the opportunity to pursue her passion, to create a space where she could share her love of baking with the world. He had shown her that he was willing to give up his old life and embrace a new one that was filled with love, purpose, and the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread. He gave her a love that was unconditional. Despite Richard's grand gesture, Sarah still faced a difficult choice. She had always dreamed of opening her own bakery, and now, thanks to Richard, that dream was finally a reality. But embracing this new life with Richard meant stepping further away from her roots, from the familiar comfort of Rosie's diner and the simple joys of small-town life. She loved Richard, but she also loved her independence, her connection to her community, and the sense of belonging she found at Rosie's. She worried that becoming part of Richard's world would mean sacrificing those things, that she would lose herself in his wealth and privilege. She also wondered if she was truly ready for a relationship with someone so different from her, someone who came from a world she barely understood. She questioned if their love was strong enough to overcome the challenges they faced, if they could truly build a lasting relationship despite their differences. She knew that she had to make a choice that would determine the course of her future. She could embrace this new life with Richard, stepping into a world of wealth and opportunity, or she could stay true to her roots, remaining in the familiar comfort of her small town. The decision weighed heavily on her heart, knowing that whatever she chose, she would be leaving something behind. In the end, Sarah made her choice. She realized that staying true to her roots didn't mean sacrificing her happiness or her dreams. She could embrace this new life with Richard without losing herself, without giving up the things that were most important to her. She accepted Richard for who he was, flaws and all, recognizing that his transformation was genuine, a testament to the power of love and understanding. She also recognized that she loved him for who he was now and who he was becoming. They both worked to bridge the gap between their worlds, finding ways to blend their different backgrounds and lifestyles. Richard continued to volunteer at the local soup kitchen and became a regular at Rosie's diner, while Sarah learned to navigate the complexities of Richard's social circle, always staying true to herself. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on a foundation of honesty, respect, and unwavering support. They faced challenges and overcame obstacles, always remembering the day they met, the day a fiery waitress slapped a rude customer and unknowingly changed both of their lives forever. They were working toward a future of shared love. And so, Sarah and Richard embarked on a future filled with love, laughter, and the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread, a testament to the fact that even the most unlikely of love stories can have a happy ending, even one that started with a slap.